Seth, good afternoon, buddy.
How are we doing? Happy Friday, Scott.
It's Friday. I've been enjoying living at home. I got to tell you, today I had to vacuum, I had to take out the trash, and my mom made me reorganize my closet. So it's just a pleasure to kind of be a child again.
Well, I'll tell you what, I feel like we picked the right topic for you this week because if we're talking about feeling like being at home in your childhood bedroom,
Yeah.
this is perfect for what we're going to talk about today, which is boy bands.
Yeah, I gotta tell you, man. This is now. I'm going to start off with. I don't know. Technically, it's a boy band, but I did find a folder of the Village People in my like little archives here. Now
That
we can get
explains
it.
so much.
We can get into that a little bit later. But the boy band, Seth, we've been doing D-side stories now for over a year and a half, and we haven't touched this subject yet. It is there, and you can't avoid it, despite any let me say references to any music genre where you have pop bands. I mean, why is boy bands or why is the concept of the boy band so big in music?
Yeah, we'll get into it, but I think your first point is a good one, which is like this idea that boy band music looms very large over the music industry. It's some of the biggest selling groups of all time, literally, are boy bands. Some of the biggest money makers of all time are boy bands. And I think the sound that was pioneered by boy bands and the producers that surrounded them has really infiltrated pop music in a way that is undeniable. Like whether it's hip hop, whether it's R&B, whether it's even rock, like there's elements of the sound and the visual presentation that boy bands pioneered that we see to this very day that goes far beyond just kind of four guys doing synchronized dancing.
Exactly. But where did this begin? Like if you go but way back, because
Yeah,
it's not just a 80s thing or a 90s.
of course.
Definitely not.
Yeah. So there's been kind of the in the primordial ooze of boy bands, there's a lot of places you could start, but I'm going to start the place I always do, which is the Beatles. I definitely
The
would not
ultimate, the original boy band.
the reason I say that, I will explain myself here, is uh they were the first band, I think, on a large scale to have this idea where each individual member had a distinct personality and fans of them would sort of get behind that individual. Oh, Paul's the cute one, like George is the quiet one, and you sort of have your person that you get behind. And then there's this merchandising machine that comes behind it where it means you buy a Paul doll and a Paul t-shirt. And there was some of that, maybe a little bit with like Elvis before it, but this was the first one to sort of have a group very conscious of having different different avenues or kind of different lanes that they stayed in,
Yep.
and they were all parts of a whole, and with the objective of kind of having fans identify with one or the other. So maybe not sonically a boy band in the way we think about it now, and maybe not quite as structured and contrived as boy bands later became, but I think there are some seeds of what the boy band universe became, starting with the Beatles. So I think in my mind it starts there. Do you agree with me for the
Well,
most part?
I agree on definitely not on the sound per se,
Yeah.
but going back and reading interviews with legends like Bob Dylan or whatnot, the way to describe Beatles in that early 60s phase is bubblegum rock, which you could
Yeah.
say is very analogous to kind of pop rock now, or you would say boy band music, which appeals to kind of a younger generation, maybe not as sophisticated as like folk music or classical music or whatnot. But I remember seeing all the merchandise and seeing the interviews of girls, especially the screaming girls, saying about which Beatle they liked. And again, it was these archetypes of what you can identify to. And that's very different than what you see as we saw in the Get Back documentary, where there's just absolutely no uniformity. It's very loose. You definitely wouldn't see screaming. Well, they did have groupies, of course, but much different from the first phase, if we call it that.
Yeah. Even the wearing of the matching suits, like there's some
Yeah.
intent behind it to kind of
Yeah.
appear polished and thoughtful. Um, and Elvis, same thing, I guess. But that's the first time where music was really targeted and marketed towards a younger audience and a female audience.
Yeah.
Before that, it was it was not. It was about adults, and kids sort of kind of absorbed what their parents listened to, and a lot of it was orchestral or classical. So to have true rock and roll music that is cleaned up, sanitized, polished, and sold to like 13-year-old girls was a very new concept. And I think very quickly they realized that this was lucrative. And so we've seen iterations of this for the past 60 plus years.
So we talked about a little bit of the merchandising or the image creation or the brand, but what about the music? Where you could see, if you compare that now with bands, with boy bands, where it's very poppy, very well produced, lots of hooks, easy kind of lyrics per se. Where did that happen after the, let's just say after the Beatles boy band days?
So I think sound wise, the earliest precursor to what we think of as boy bands is probably Motown groups. So groups like the Temptations, the Four Tops, not Motown, but Frankie Valli and the Four Seasons. Once again, very sharp, very, harmonies, different. They were less about different personalities then, but sound wise closer, production wise closer. Like you said, very short, very hooky. That was sort of put those two elements together, take the Beatles and the Temptations, meld them together, see what the best parts of them or the most marketable parts of them are. And that really evolves. And then later that turned into the Jackson 5.
Yeah,
which I think is actually probably something close to the godfather of the modern boy band. The Osmond, same thing. The white version of the Jackson 5,
version.
Right? I mean,
no, exactly, and that's what I was going to say. They had, but they really looked to the Beatles, right? They even had their own cartoon. Everyone knew their names, including Tito. They kind of forgotten one of the Jackson 5.
Tito. Yeah.
Tito, we didn't forget you. But all those elements, and then you had that kind of cute bass, right, with Michael Jackson that you saw recreated with the Osmonds, with Donny Osmond, right? He had his older brothers, basically the Tito version, all in the same outfit, singing very love type songs that would appeal to, I think, a very teenage, especially female audience.
Yeah. And from there, so that was, late 60s, early 70s. There was a bit of a lull, I think, as sort of proper rock music took the forefront for younger audiences, but I think this comes back in a big way starting in the mid to late 80s. And I think the kind of generally agreed upon first boy band and the way we think about it, which is and kind of an important component of it is the members themselves are at least perceived as young and at least perceived as sort of contemporaries of their audience, right? Someone you really can like, oh, that's my boyfriend. Like I've got a poster of him on my wall. And the first band I think that fits that modern description is probably New Edition. And literally that name New Edition was because they were supposed to be a new edition of the Jackson 5. That's where the origin of the name is. These were 5 kids from outside of Boston. They were, all kind of went on to be, they were Belle Biv DeVoe later, famous in their own right. Bobby Brown obviously married Whitney Houston. But these guys came together for a talent search in Boston, discovered by this guy named Maurice Starr. They won a talent competition for $500, and he immediately put together an album, put together a tour. They went on the tour, and when they got home, they were all given a check for their tour of $1.87. So I think this sets the tone for both what a boy band should look like, sound like, and also how they should be absolutely abused by management. Yeah, they really were the archetype in a lot of different ways.
They quickly learned what a P&L was right there.
Exactly. They just signed the deal blindly. Take my songs. I'll go where you tell me. Yeah. And big surprise, they don't have your best interest.
They're like, wait, what are these things called? Expenses. And they keep just going and going. It's so you have New Edition. And I remember that, they were when I was growing up, they were incredibly popular. But to me, it really wasn't until New Kids on the Block where it had this massive explosion. And I think that was almost the paragon of, you had the characters and you even had a little bit of age difference with the younger. It harked back to, again, Donny and Michael Jackson, Donny Osmond, where you kind of had the young, cute guy and then kind of the older guys behind it.
Yes, and funny enough, in New Kids on the Block, there was another Donnie Wahlberg, the brother of Mark Wahlberg, and he was not the young one. He was sort of like the older tough guy. But you had Joey McIntyre, and by the way, New Kids on the Block, another Boston group.
Yeah.
So apparently Boston, Massachusetts, the early mecca of boy bands. Who'd have thunk it? But
Yeah.
it is absolutely true, especially when you look at the record sales numbers. There's no
Yeah.
question about it.
And
So
it seems that they both had a formula too. They'd always open up with some dance track, like New Kids on the Block would kind of establish themselves as this choreographed, really slick dancing outfit, and then you would have the ballad, which I saw a lot of similarities to hair metal, where you
I
have
was
the
just gonna
rocker with the ballad.
you took the words right out of my mouth. I was gonna say this is not a formula that is unique to boy bands. You've got Guns N'
The,
Roses dropping
oh,
you know,
welcome to the jungle.
yeah, and then you've got these big ballads, November Rain. I mean, it's
Yeah.
bring them in with the fun stuff and then keep the girls around with the slow stuff.
Yeah.
It's a tried and true formula that is it works across genres. It's universal. So let's keep going on boy bands. So I
Well,
think oh yeah,
I was
go
going
ahead.
to ask you about this, this idea that there's these archetypes that you mentioned earlier, this kind of something for everyone. And what are they? So if you had to define the major archetypes of
Yeah.
a typical boy band.
So I think there's let me think about this. There's the singer, the lead singer, which
Yeah.
isn't always automatically the most popular one, but there's the guy who kind of has the pipes. There's usually the cute one / the young one who is, baby face. It was Justin Timberlake in Sync. He became a lot more, but there's that guy. There's always the old guy. There's
Yes.
this guy is like 4 or 5 years too old to be in
The
this group.
Tito.
Like he's the guy who buys the beer for the group. Like he's that guy. There's like the guy who can sing low. There's like the bass guy. And then there's the what is he doing here guy, I guess. It's almost like let's find a guy with a different color hair that someone else can kind of jump on. But
Well,
generally speaking, there typically is not a lot of racial diversity within a boy band. Typically it's like this, and when you even think about it, you've got, like we said, you've got New Edition, you got Boyz II Men, but then you've got like Menudo, which is more like of a a Latin audience. You've got we'll get to them, but Boyz II Men and NSYNC, or excuse me, Backstreet Boys and NSYNC, which is like more of like a polished like white group. Like they really do. It's almost like going shopping for ice cream flavors. It's like, what's your flavor? Not only we'll find you a group that you feel comfortable with, and then within that, you can pick a guy within that group to be your person. So they're very strategically structured to provide different options for the fan. We'll go a little bit more into that too.
Yeah, it is truly a genius product. You're like, everyone can play. Everyone's going to like this flavor. And I mean, the one I thought you forgot, though, you got to have the tough guy. There's the guy with a bit of an edge, right? There's always someone who's got the cool facial hair, maybe now a tat or face tat in today's world. But you always have that edge. You got the cute guy. Then you got the dude who's clearly too old with a mustache coming in and they're trying to hide it. His kids, they don't know what that is. Got a family. So you got something for everyone there. And I thought that was a very strategic play, very successful, right? If you think about you want to appeal to the widest audience possible.
Yeah. And it's in I was just thinking about this, but Menudo is something that popped into my head. That's a group that was put together to be kind of like Hispanic focused. But a notable thing about Menudo is they were not like 5 specific guys. They were like, as soon as you got to be like, basically as soon as you hit puberty or maybe a little more, as soon as you appeared to be growing into like a fully formed person, they would just kick you out of the group and they'd get a new guy. So Menudo as a group existed for like 25 years with 50 different members, including Ricky Martin being one of them. But like, it's amazing how the formula is so tight that it transcends even people. It's just like, let's get someone who fits this archetype. And as soon as you grow out of it, bring on the next one.
It is beyond the individual. This is like the Logan's Run. If you've ever seen that movie, when you're 30, they kill you. This is like when you first sport a mustache, you're gone.
Yep. You're out. They inspect every day.
You can imagine them looking, oh no, I got 20 days left. Well, Seth, one of the things I've noticed too with boy bands, especially in these kind of in the latter half of the 1990s and 2000s, is this sense of rivalry. And I wasn't sure if it was just about, if you have one successful band, like you have Nirvana, then you got Pearl Jam, and then you got a bunch of others, or you have your Van Halen and copycats, or if it was designed to kind of create, just like in sports, you need this way of comparing two different teams.
Yeah, well, I think more so than any of the bands you described in the boy band universe, rivalries are very manufactured and very choiceful. And let's jump into probably the most notorious rivalry and also the notorious kind of like origin story of the boy bands, which is Lou Pearlman. First off, fun fact about Lou Pearlman, first
Yeah.
cousin of Art Garfunkel from Simon and Garfunkel, which I didn't know until I was just doing my research. But Lou Pearlman was this guy. He was sort of a businessman, not in the music industry, and was fascinated by the success of New Kids on the Block, and just kind of said, like, wait, I can stitch this together if I've got money and I've got a marketing plan. This is something I can create. And so he went and started a label called Transcontinental Records, put together like a casting call, and put together a group of 5 guys, which became the Backstreet Boys, which is crazy. I'm sure you guys have heard of them. They're the most successful boy band ever on paper. They've sold over 130 million records. And it was all kind of the vision of this one rather shady businessman, which we'll come back to. But so Backstreet Boys came out. He sent them to Sweden with these super producers in Stockholm, but the studio called Chiron Records. This guy, Dennis Pop was his name. He's sort of the godfather of boy bands. But then Max Martin, who we'll come back to, also produced these records. It was like, we are a hit factory. We are not famous, but we can come up with hooks as long as the day goes, and we're going to make these bands huge. So the Backstreet Boys had a ton of success, and Lou Pearlman said, wait, I can just keep doing this. So shortly after, about 6 months after that record came out, came NSYNC, which is the same structure. Casting call, put together a group of guys, sent them off to Sweden, put out a record. And that's when he realized the power of marketing, of, are you a Backstreet Boys person? Are you an NSYNC person? I remember living it, where the Backstreet Boys would put out a record and the first week sales would be 1.6 million. And then NSYNC put out No Strings Attached, 2.2 million. It was like the fans felt obligated to buy more records so they could beat the other band. And it was this, I think they were familiar with each other, but there wasn't a rivalry like Beatles and Stones where you're writing the music and you're trying to one up each other. It's all in the eyes of the fan. The bands don't give a shit. They're like kind of they're puppets basically, right?
Yeah.
Without being too unfair. But this proved a very successful formula. So he went, Lou Pearlman started O-Town, he started LFO, and about a dozen other groups to varying degrees of success. But he was the godfather of boy bands. He also figured out that they're very easy manipulated. If you write the right contracts, you can keep a lot of their money. And so these guys, I think now down the road, the really big ones have made plenty. But there's a lot of these bands who were very popular in their day who kind of walked away with nothing because Pearlman screwed them so bad. And he ended up in prison for fraud and for all of the kind of shady business dealings he had done with these boy bands. But there's no doubt that this one random guy from Orlando figured out the formula and just replicated it and stoked rivalries and sold a lot of fucking records.
I mean, it sounds like he just created the market, right? He owned the market. He's like what is it? The Bankman-Fried guy, Sam Bankman-Fried. SBF. But I thought it was just funny how you mentioned that it's insanely profitable. And that could be one of the reasons that it is it's like a virtuous cycle. It's extremely profitable. So there's incentive to do that. There's incentive to market it. And as you said, it really doesn't matter about the players, so to speak. You can just replace them to some extent.
Or again, it's like you can even, if there's like, I was thinking about the idea of like, if you're sort of like an indie boy band fan, it's like, we'll give you a weird group that no one else is a fan of, and you're a fan of them just to be different. So like you had this full, it's like going from shopping at the corner store to shopping at Walmart. You have so many more choices. By the time Lou Pearlman came along, and why be rivalries with another manager? Just create 5 bands and manage them all.
Well, you're just like saying what Procter and Gamble does with shampoo. It's the same ingredients, pretty much. Just put different labels on it, different shapes, and you own the market. It is truly a market. But where do you see?
These groups were probably using a lot of shampoo at the time too.
Yeah, exactly. There's a lot of deals with gel companies. So Seth, we talk about the boy band. We've kind of obviously defined the major components of it. What is it about why the girls scream? Like, well, even now, right? And I'm almost 50. For my generation, for NSYNC, if they go to a concert, you'll get 40-year-old women screaming. And these
Yeah.
dudes, I mean, some of them got a little bit of pot belly. They're going timeout after 10 minutes. They're drinking water.
Yeah, they're hosing down Joey Fatone between sets, no question.
Yeah. I mean, dude's eating cannoli between songs. Like, okay. And they can't do those moves. They try those moves, they just can't do them. But
Yeah.
what is it? What is it about? I mean, you saw this with the Beatles, right? Everyone's seen those videos where women are just literally a stampede towards these guys.
Yeah, that I had heard this said once by, again, Paul McCartney, number one featured guy in this podcast, that he had equated it to men going to a soccer game in England, where it's like you kind of are expected to sort of have decorum in your life, go to work, do your thing, and then for like 3 hours a week, you just get there and like scream and you're hugging your friends and you have this like very almost like it's like a timeout from reality, and just this kind of excitement overcomes you. So I don't even necessarily chalk it up to anything that is female specific. I think guys have their equivalent, which is just different, but it's like it's an escapism thing. It's like a release of energy. And for whatever reason, it just happens to be channeled at these groups because it's sort of acceptable. But I don't know that there's anything particularly true. Because again, if you look at a lot of these groups, like they're unique looking, but they're not like the most handsome guys all the time. They're just kind of dudes, and the music is very catchy, but it's not anything that's going to send you into hysterics. But it's almost like there's permission to do so because other people are doing it, and it is contagious. And so I think it's that outlet in a way that I think girls don't have a lot of time to, or oftentimes to act that way, right?
Yeah.
So it's like socially acceptable to just sort of lose yourself in this.
I was going to say it's a very controlled like way just to let everything out that you can't do, especially when you think about those old societies, especially like in the UK and even in Japan. I mean, that's the thing I was going to say. This is not just a US phenomenon. I mean, this is global. You obviously referenced Menudo, but look at what's happening now. I mean, look where are we now? We're at BTS, which is essentially Korea meets LA. So I mean, K-pop, J-pop, C-pop, it's all pretty much the same.
To me, all of those K-pop in particular is the boy band formula that we just talked about, taken to its absolute logical extreme, which is to say, like, you want polish, these guys go to fucking K-pop boot camp for like 6 months. Or like, we are going to mold you into the platonic ideal of what someone wants. We're not going to have 4 guys or 5 guys in the group. We're going to have like 14 guys in the group. So as you really can, like, you've got a much wider palette from which to pick your paintbrush with these K-pop groups. You've got, I think an underrated piece that was not really as much of a factor in that kind of first wave of the late 90s, early 2000s is social media. They've learned to kind of like harness. I mean, they call it BTS Army. They've like taken down political candidates who they feel wronged by because of their passion for this group. And it's like more of an idea and a lifestyle, but it's again hyper manicured, presented in such a way to be internationally appealing, kind of a little plastic. None of them are allowed to have relationships or girlfriends. They are faces to put on a poster. And they really don't even have personalities, because then you can project whatever you want onto them. And I think K-pop, J-pop, like, you see almost like they're saying the quiet part out loud. They're such an extreme, like, cookie cutter example. And people are going bananas over them, and the sales numbers and the concert tickets, and it all shows that. But it's just, it's the next level of what we've been seeing evolve for 40 years with boy bands.
Yeah. And then we have on the female side, there's like the female version of the boy bands, but to me, definitely not as prevalent. Definitely not, I would say successful, but just in terms of scale. It is dominant. It is truly a boy band. Now, Seth, as we kind of round up here, I want to ask you and you can admit this over the phone to us and all the people listening. What is your favorite boy band and track? And you can say it. We all got one. And everyone, we know you got one, right? They're too hooky to deny.
Agree. And that's what I think, as we do often on this show, it's like we're not going to try to be too cool. We've listened to this stuff just as much as the cool music we listen to. So I would say favorite boy band for me would probably be NSYNC. They are a little less squishy and a little more like, some of those songs are really well written, like power pop songs, very dancey, very, very slickly produced. Like there are songs that I think are catchy to this day, and they're not too cheesy, which I always appreciated. I think that was intentional to have them have a little more edge than some of those groups. Favorite song, I'm going to take it back a little bit farther and go a little bit more obscure. This is a middle school dance favorite, and it's very nostalgic, which is I Can Love You Like That by the band All For One. I don't know that anybody would remember the group, but I know that people would remember the song if they heard it. So that as I was searching around, that one bubbled to the top. Like, damn, this just like, it makes me think about like being 10. I don't know. It's nostalgia more than appreciation for the jam, but it is a jam. So what about you, Scott? What are your two?
Geez. I mean, how do I say it? I'm not going to even talk about like the Beatles or even like Jackson 5, because they're just so cool. The
more traditional.
They're just so cool. They're technically boy bands, but no, I'm going to say this. All right. And I got to credit the bodyguard that I had when I was in Mexico doing a satol harvesting. That's a whole other story. This dude had I'm in the middle of the Chihuahua deserts, and he's playing the greatest hits of the Backstreet Boys. Now I gotta admit, he had it, and I don't know if it was actually a CD, if it was broken, because it just would repeat, and we'd be on 4 or 5 hour trips. And I don't know if it was just repetition, osmosis, or what, but I got to tell you, it was really good. The songs were so well constructed, and I found myself singing to these songs.
And I forget if I've seen a video of this happening or just heard the story a couple times, but I can confirm that this is absolutely true, and just hearing it looped. And we'll come back to, you said so well constructed, from the Dungeons of Sweden. Those are all fucking written by one guy, Max Martin. He is tied as most number one hits as a producer. Do you know who he's tied with, Scott?
I can only imagine. Is it Quincy Jones?
No, but good guess. It is somehow the top two guys are both Martins. It's George Martin from the Beatles. So
there's a reason. These songs are just really good. I mean, when you hear "I Want It That Way" and you hear the opening and "You Are," listen, man, if Paul McCartney was on his piano, it would be a massive hit that the hipsters would love. Like, I got to say, like, I mean, I'm not a big fan of the dance moves or what. I mean, obviously I wish I could have been in a boy band, but
wasn't meant to be.
That's another episode. If you had to be reincarnated, which boy band would it be? And which dude? I would obviously be they didn't really have a dorky version, but that is "I Want It That Way." Like, that song by Backstreet is just pure perfection. Or I should boy band
pure perfection. Put it on the back of the book sleeve. There it is. I love it.
And just say on our social media, guys, we're gonna pound this. Like, you're just gonna I'm gonna like simulate what I had to go through. And by the 80th time you hear it, you'll recognize the genius. Yes, I guarantee it.
Spreading the gospel. I appreciate it.
Well, Seth, it's Friday night. I hope you're going out to a club. Right. When I go, they don't let me in unless I say I'm looking for my daughter or my son. And you can practice some moves there. Maybe some of the NSYNC that you were referencing.
Hey, I'm happy to hear the jams. I don't think I've got the moves in me this weekend. I did just turn 35 this week. I'm a little creaky. Oh my gosh. So, I don't know that I'm in the dance game anymore.
You got to stretch, bro. You got to stretch.
You're right. Do a stretch in the corner, grab a drink, and see where it takes you.
Well, everyone, listen, we want to say thanks again. I encourage everyone to pull out those CDs or stream that latest or your favorite boy band song, and you'll realize the genius. And don't be afraid to dance, everyone.
Don't be afraid to dance in public. Dance like no one's watching. And remember the most important question the Backstreet Boys told us: am I sexual? And the answer being, yeah. Yes, you are.
All right, everyone. Have a good weekend. See ya.
All right, see ya.